Hello everyone, it's Alex here. Konnichiwa minasan, Alex this. Um, so today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm not going to play any music or do any art or anything. I'm going to instead discuss an issue that's of sort of personal interest to me, but I framed it philosophically, something about art consumption, and I'll get to that just in a second. So basically, I have a question about art consumption that kind of affects the way I consume art. And the question is, does consuming more and more of a certain medium enrich or dilute your experience with previous works in that medium? So, like, say you experience some great movie or great game often in your youth or maybe in your younger years, and you think this is just the greatest thing, and it drives you to consume more and more of that medium, and then you find other films, other games that are better than it or something, and you just played so many things that you're just like, oh well, you know what, I guess it wasn't that great. So that kind of dilutes your experience with it. But is that the only way that things can happen? Is it also possible that the more you gain context for the original work, you see what a unique thing it was, or just having seen the history, the rich history of all these things, that it just like builds and builds so that you have more passion for that work? And it really kind of it interests me. I think straight off, the first answer seems to be like it would dilute your previous experiences. The more you know about stuff, the less unique anything is. And it just becomes sort of like, oh, that's just one option among many. There are other things that are just as good or even better. So oftentimes you'll feel like, yeah, the more you experience it, kind of dilutes it. And that to me is a little bit sad, maybe. It's one of the reasons I feel like I don't consume more and more media of a certain thing. It's like I have movies that I like, I have games that I like. I don't necessarily want to change my perception of them with new works. It sounds like very sort of, I don't know, it's not challenging yourself very much. But at the same time, I do actually seek out new experiences and new cultures, new languages, new countries. That's a different topic. But anyway, I think that's the first answer, is that it seems like, oh yeah, these things are diluted. But I did want to control for a few factors, because there are certain things that apparently can change your appreciation for work that don't have much to do with how much you experience new things. And those two things are memories associated with an experience, which track positively with your appreciation. So older things will actually have more memories associated with them usually, so that will be more positive appreciation. So it won't maybe be affected by new things. And the other one is age. So just from aging in general, you sort of feel like been there, done that. All these old things that were in my childhood. That's when I was young and silly, or things like that come up, so that your age sort of affects um, what you judge to be worthwhile, and that a lot of times your age, your experiences through just normal aging, like you're not going to experience less things as you get older. You can only experience more things as you get older. So that experience kind of dilutes everything that you previously experienced as being like, oh, that was just a sort of, you know, earlier time, and it's not as valuable, I guess, now. So it seems to be dilution is the more common thing. But is it possible you find people who get into a certain passionate field, like a film, they get into film, and then suddenly every film they watch like just builds and builds that general passion they have for the medium as a whole, so that new things just glom onto older experiences and older things, and they sort of have a synergistic, enrichment effect. I wonder if there are people like that. I think there are. Um, and anybody who wants to, you can comment about your experience with this thing. That's what I was hoping for, is to see what people feel like. But this is just from the consumption side, about like how you experience new pieces of art. And sometimes I feel like I don't play new video games because they're kind of too good. They are gonna wipe out all my memories of previous games that I've played, or I won't be able to go back to those games. Sometimes I think about that, but it's not really true. The real reason that I can't play new games is that I'm poor. I can't afford to play the games, and the time I spend doing other things. I have other hobbies, but that are, you know, you know, valuable to whatever degree they are somewhat to me. But yeah, I think so. A few examples, maybe taken from my formative years. I played Final Fantasy VII when I was young, and it was, sort of amazing experience that it was really a wonderful revelation of a game to me. And since then, I haven't played many games that I felt were better than it, even though I've played many, many games, many RPGs and other things. But it's like having played Final Fantasy VI later, I feel like, oh, I guess it wasn't like Final Fantasy VII was suddenly just like this amazing thing that Squaresoft had produced. They had made previous games that were also very good, and they had just sort of like iterated on their processes, and they were able to make a great story just like they had before. So it did sort of dilute my experience with that game. But not really, but I think it's mainly the memory thing creeping in, which I said I wanted to sort of adjust for. It's a little bit of a confounding variable. You can't quite take out memory and age from those things. Some things from your formative years are just going to be stuck on there as being, really great experiences that can't be topped by later things. But mentally, I guess you can sort of reason your way out of your previous experiences. And that actually does bring me up to, I did research this topic a little bit. I didn't just kind of, like, oh, well, whatever, I don't know. But there isn't too much research on what I said, where like works that are new to you in a medium, how they affect works that you've previously experienced in that medium. There wasn't much research on that. However, there was research on how, memories affect your experience, and how expertise affects your experience with works. And there was one published article that said experts in a given field of abstract art felt the same emotional and stimulation from abstract works as lay people. People had no experience with the arts, but they had greater cognitive appreciation. So they were able to mentally appreciate the aesthetics of abstract works better than people who had no experience with it. So in that case, the experts didn't necessarily have any diluted appreciation for the work or enriched necessarily. The only enrichment was taking place was cognitively. They could reason themselves into seeing why something was really great for aesthetic reasons. Um, so another topic that I thought about bringing up was, what about producing works of art? So like I write music, I write work, I write poetry, I write all kinds of things, or I draw, and I do things like that. And there is a little bit of fear that you're going to ruin the works that you've already done by writing something better. I don't know if people think that very much, but it's like, if you're happy with certain songs that you've written and you're like, okay, this is good, then you don't really have the drive to like make more. Most of the time, people make more things because they're like, all the stuff that I've written, it's all garbage. Everything that I've done before is such trash. I need to do something new. And so that sense sort of lands on like, if for creating works, your new stuff does sort of dilute your past experiences, and you do sort of throw it all by the wayside. But I think that also is a little bit of age experience, that it doesn't have so much to do with new things, because there are some songs, for example, that I wrote when I was less skilled, and I still think that the main idea of those songs was pretty good and that they could be cleaned up or produced much better. It's just that I had a raw idea, I went with it, and it turned into what it was, and it was good for that time. And I think that no amount of writing better songs is really going to change that. So it's just, music sort of, you can see like, even if it's a simple idea, it can be very effective and profound. So, um, well, that's a little bit of a tangent. I didn't quite, get to the point that I wanted to make with that. But One other issue that comes up with age and sort of is interesting, I think, maybe that comes up with this topic a little bit is the idea of like having refined taste, or what I actually really think is more like losing sensitivity to certain things. And a good example of this is food. So when you're a child, you sort of feel that like simple foods are good enough, they're delicious. You don't need much like spices or ketchup or mustard or anything. You just eat like, well, ketchup is people when they're young, they eat ketchup a lot, I guess. Um, so food, you feel like, oh, okay, this is when you're older, your tastes develop, right? And you think, oh, I'm more refined. I have a better palate. I can eat different spices. I find these all very enjoyable. But the reality is that your taste buds are simply dying and that you have less real sensitivity to simpler things. So you're sort of, you think that you're like an expert in food or something like that, but really you're like sort of diluting your experiences. Um, and that I think that's also it's seen more easily in something like sports. Like when you're playing sports when you're young, you're quite energetic and you can do it for a long time and it'll be rough, intense sports, physically intense sports. Then when you're older, you're playing like maybe bocce or croquet or something, and it seems no one would argue that that's like a more refined game maybe than soccer. I don't think they would say that. Maybe they would, but it's like clearly you're playing these different games because you have lost some sensitivity, and maybe that's true overall with experiencing art, is that you actually are losing sensitivity, so you need more sort of different avant-garde works to draw your attention, and that it's not that the previous things are diluted, or they were diluted, but it's actually your lack of sensitivity to them now. So maybe that was a little bit rambly. This is just the first time for this type of video. I had other things that I wanted to talk about with it. If I forgot something or you have something to say, please let me know. Um, Again, I wrote a bunch of documents on this. I wrote like 10 pages of notes and they're all rambly and they go on different things. And I was going to talk about gatekeeping and it was just like, it's too much. So I will probably edit this down a little bit and maybe put it up and see if anybody is interested. Um, but I will get back to doing some covers. I have at least one Japanese cover that I'm looking to do now that I'm a little bit more settled. Okay, so that's it for now, everybody. I'm gonna say, you know, ではまたね in Japanese, or see you everyone. Bye.